What are Aristotle's four causes? Let's consider. Hello, philosophers. I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher Show, where we consider the greatest questions of human history. What is it to know a thing? For Aristotle, it's to know a thing's cause. It's to answer a why question. It's to answer the question why a thing is there. Let's consider three kinds of objects. First, an inert natural object like a rock. Second, a biological object like an oak sapling. And third, an artifact like a house. And by artifact, I mean something that is made by a human. So considering those three things, we can ask of each one of them why those things exist. And according to Aristotle, there are four different kinds of answers. By the way, you can read up on this in Aristotle's Physics, Book 2, Chapter 3, or his Metaphysics, Book 5, Chapter 2, which is almost identical. So the first answer to a why question would be the material cause. And this is that from which a thing comes into being, or that out of which a thing comes into being. This is basically the stuff that a thing is made out of. So Aristotle gives the examples of the bronze of a statue or the silver of a cup, right? That's the stuff that the statue is made out of or the cup is made out of. And our three examples that we had, for the rock, it is just the material that the rock is made out of, depending on what kind of rock you have. In the oak sapling, it would be the wood and the stuff that makes up the leaf. It's the organic material, in other words. And when it comes to the house, it would be wood and nails and whatever else goes into that particular house. Next is the formal cause. And this one is really hard to define without just using the word form. He says it's the formula or the account of the essence. This is the form or pattern or structure, or C.D.C. Reeve translates it as the paradigm. Aristotle gives the example that the ratio of 2-to-1 and just number in general are the formal cause of the octave. Of our three things, it's really hard to say anything but the word form. What causes the rock to be the way that it is? It's the form of the rock. What causes the oak sapling to be the way that it is? The form of the oak sapling and the form of the house. Partially it's the shape or structure of the house, but really it's more than just that. Now, some philosophers have doubted whether there was such a thing as a formal cause. They've thought that maybe there's just the material cause, right? The only real answer we have to a why question here would be that out of which something comes into being. But to see that there must be some additional answer to this question, consider, for example, the oak sapling and crush it into little pieces, right? Just take a trash compactor and crush it up until it's just a square of stuff, a cube of stuff, right? Is it an oak sapling anymore? No. But do you have the same material cause? Yes, you have the same stuff that you had before, and yet you don't have the same object. So there must be something about the object that's causing it to be an oak sapling versus just a cube of stuff. Whatever that is, we'll call the form. For more on matter and form, please see my video on hylomorphism. The next answer we have is the efficient cause. And this is that from which the change first begins, or that from which the freedom from change first begins, right? If it's already changing and you're going to stop that change, whatever it is that begins the change to happen or stops the change from happening, that we would call an efficient cause. And this is typically what we mean by the word cause. Usually when you use the word cause, you're not referring to the material cause or the formal cause. Usually you're talking about whatever impetus there was that began the change. So Aristotle gives the examples: the man who is deliberated in whatever he was going to do, whatever action he was going to do. The man deliberating is the efficient cause of the action. Or the father is the cause of the child, because the father is, what brings about the child. The maker is the cause of the thing made. Or in general, the change producer is the cause of the thing changing. For our three examples, we have the rock. What is the efficient cause of the rock? Whatever it is that caused the stuff of the rock to compress into one thing, whatever natural occurrences. For the oak sapling, would be its parent that dropped the acorn For a house, it would be the workers that actually worked on the house to bring it into being. The efficient cause is also behind what we call the principle of causality, which says that anything that begins to exist requires a cause, which is a pretty intuitive principle, but there are objections to it, and you can see my videos on that for more. The last cause is the final cause, or the end, or that for the sake of which the thing comes into being. Aristotle gives the example of health as the final cause of walking. Why does a person walk? Because the person wants to produce health. That is the final cause. That is the goal. That is the end. And notice these why questions aren't just questions to answer why like physical objects are there, but now they're answering why certain actions are happening. They can answer why events are there. So these causes are meant to explain everything, why anything is there. Aristotle also, under this, guys, points out that there are intermediate causes that lead to the ultimate end. So, for example, if you're trying to bring about health, you will have some instruments like medical instruments possibly, or health instruments, or drugs that you might take. And I mean like drugs for your health, not like heroin or something like that. Or certain works that you might have, such as, he says, purging or making thin. We could say like working out or something like that. But for our three objects, what would be the final cause? So this is where things get a little tricky. And for that reason, what we probably should do is look at the biological object first, and then come back and look at the inert object. So what is the final cause of the oak sapling? Well, it's whatever it does by its very nature, right? What does it do by its nature? The oak sapling, for example, grows into an oak. So that's its final cause. That's what its goal is. If we can use the word goal, we can't really use the word goal because it doesn't have any kind of intentionality, but it's got some kind of end, some kind of directedness, and it's to be that oak. So it's kind of easy to see with a biological object what the end of it would be, what the final cause of it would be. When it comes to an inert object like a rock, it's a little more difficult to see, but we could say the same thing. It's whatever it does by its very nature. So a rock just sits around by its very nature. That's its final cause, usually. If it's on the side of a hill and it's rolling down, well, it's rolling down to a specific point. That would be its final cause, right? Its final cause, rather than, it would roll down a hill rather than explode, right? It's got some kind of directedness. It's got something that it's going towards. It's going to roll down the hill rather than turn into a tulip or something like that, right? It's got some kind of end that we are going to look at. And so that is part of the whole point of final causality, is that it explains the regularity with which things happen. So the oak tree, for example, the oak sapling grows into an oak. It doesn't grow into a bicycle. The rock rolls down the hill to a point. It doesn't roll down the hill and freeze into a cube of ice. Things in general happen with some kind of regularity. This is the final cause. The final cause accounts for that regularity. What about when it comes to artifacts, though? Artifacts are a little odd in this regard, and I won't get too far into this, but I'll just say that the reason they are weird is because they don't have substantial forms. They only have accidental forms. That's how they exist. What does that mean? I can't really explain to you in this video, but just know that that's why artifacts are going to be different. So an artifact has as its final cause whatever is the intention of the efficient cause. So for our house, the final cause is to be lived in. So it's kind of odd when we're considering Aristotle's final cause. It seems like there's two kinds of final cause. There's like an inner final cause and there's an outer final cause. The inner final cause, when we're talking about natural things, like a biological object or an inert natural object like a rock, comes from the form of the thing, right? That's where the final cause comes from, and it's whatever it does by its nature. Whereas when we're talking about an artifact, the final cause comes from the efficient cause. It's whatever the purpose of the thing is. So when we use that word purpose, we're talking about artifacts because they're making by an efficient cause or an agent, we can call it, with some kind of intentionality, with some kind of purpose. But we wouldn't use that word when we're talking about a natural object. This kind of directedness, by the way, where it's objects are directed toward a particular end naturally, we call a teleology, right? That is being directed toward an end. Now, you should know that later philosophers have taken Aristotle to task because they've claimed that his notion of teleology assumes that things were created with some kind of goal, because we have this kind of confusion of things that are made with a goal in mind, with a purpose, whereas you have natural things that have some kind of directedness. And it sounds like the two are the same thing. It sounds like Aristotle sneaking in some kind of purposiveness into natural things. Now, it is the case that Aristotle thinks that the universe was created by God and that he can prove that because of teleology. But it's not the case that his teleology assumes that. Hopefully you see there's a difference here between the teleology of a natural object and the design of an artifact. But the important thing to note is that Aristotle's argument for the existence of God from final causality is something that he requires additional argumentation for. It's not something that he sneaks into his concept of teleology. So those are Aristotle's four causes. A few interesting conclusions that he draws from this. The first one is wildly obvious. Everything has more than one cause, and of course in the four different ways. But second, two things can cause each other so long as they cause each other in different ways. And he gives the example of exercise can cause good health efficiently, but good health can cause exercise with final causality. So exercise is what brings about the good health. That is your efficient cause. But good health causes you to exercise as a goal, as a purpose that you have. So that's your final causality. So notice how the two things cause each other, but in different ways. Also note that one thing or its absence can cause contradictories. So he says that the presence of a steersman can cause the safety of a boat, but its absence could cause the destruction of the boat. So one thing, in other words, could cause contraries. Now, Aristotle's four causes are studied in great nuance by later philosophers. Two additional, possibly additional causes. There's some debate on whether we should consider these as additional causes or that whether we should consider them just as types of the four causes. One of them is the instrumental cause. So when we consider our builders that are building our house, they use material that goes into the house, but they also use stuff like hammers and saws that don't actually go into making the house, right? They're not part of the stuff of the house. So they're not the material cause. And yet they're not like efficient causes like the builders are the efficient causes, right? Because they couldn't bring together the house by themselves. So some philosophers have called these the instrumental cause. They're the causes that have to have their power directed and applied by an outside efficient cause. Some people will claim that instrumental causes are just a type of efficient cause. Some people will say, no, they've got to be different. I don't know. But notice that you won't find an instrumental cause in everything. There's not an instrumental cause, for example, in our oak sapling. So there you go, the instrumental cause. And then there's also the exemplar cause. So in our example of the house, this would be something like the blueprints of the house. The blueprints of the house are not part of the stuff of the house. They kind of have the form of the house, right? It's like the structure of the house is there in the blueprints, and yet it's not the actual structure that's making the house to be the way that it is, right? If the actual structure were taken away, then you would just have rubble. That's the form of the house. But the blueprint isn't that form of the house like that. And yet it's kind of like that, right? It's in a way, it is the structure of the house. So we call this the exemplar cause. And it's sort of like the form of the object, but existing distinct from the object and existing abstractly. Now, some philosophers will claim that this is just another type of formal cause. And maybe it is. It's a hot debate. I think it's kind of odd. I don't know, because, the formal cause should be something that's actually forming the thing. And the exemplar is not actually forming the thing. So I think it's odd to call it the formal cause, but I'll leave that up to you. What do you think? And please let me know if you have any questions on any of these causes. And please also support this project. I have my Patreon link in the description, and it would really help me out if you could contribute anything that you could contribute. It would help me to put out more videos that would help people in their philosophy endeavors. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.